You are convinced that you're never, and you're like, oh my gosh, we can never win again. The psychology of it all is challenging. Now, I mentioned Rick Carlisle, and if he's playing checkers versus playing chess. I saw that when the Pacers went up 2-1, there were people predicting. I saw the predictions. I heard them. You know, everybody's saying, oh, Scott Foster, the extender. Scott Foster, the guy that comes in and his job, he is the talking with the media. Rick Carlisle, the head coach of the Indiana Pacers, had the following to say.
I think it's awful some of the things I've seen about the officiating, and Scott Foster in particular. I've known Scott Foster for 30 years. He's a great official. He's done a great job in these playoffs. We've had him a lot of times. And the ridiculous scrutiny that's being thrown out there is terrible and unfair and unjust and stupid.
Now, here's what's interesting in that game, okay? Oklahoma City was called for 26 fouls. The Pacers 27. Okay. If you look at the box score, it was called pretty evenly. I mean, I thought, truth be told, the Pacers shot 33 free throws. Oklahoma City shot 38. Okay. You know, it is true that it was not the officials that caused somehow the Pacers to lose a game where they hit 8 more three-pointers than did the opposition. But having said that, there's no question that there were some missed calls late or inappropriate calls late. The push-off of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander followed by a travel is pretty egregious. And I understand that that gives people the fuel needed to spout the fire of some sort of a conspiracy against Indiana. The one thing I will say about that is, okay, so the NBA has a bias against the Indiana Pacers. And forever we have become programmed and conditioned in this town to believe that that is because it's a small market flyover city that doesn't get them great TV ratings, that doesn't have a superstar, that little old Indianapolis. And we are conditioned to think that because we saw Patrick Ewing and New York City get 17 fouls in Game 4 in '94. We're conditioned to believe that because we saw Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen foul Mark Jackson 37 times in the fourth quarter of Game 7 in 1998. We're conditioned to believe that because we witnessed Shaquille O'Neal running amok in the 2000 NBA Finals, or because we saw LeBron James and Dwayne Wade and the Miami Heat in the Eastern Conference Finals. We were conditioned to believe all that, but do we really think that now the big market favoritism is going towards Oklahoma City and the household name of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander? I don't think that's the case, but I think what you see from Rick Carlisle there is a little bit of chess play. Yes, I believe that Rick Carlisle is a loyal guy. I believe that Rick Carlisle probably does know Scott Foster. And Rick Carlisle did not challenge anything in that game. But I also think Rick Carlisle is smart enough to know that his team now has 2 games of 3 left on the road, and probably and almost assuredly Scott Foster, if it goes to a Game 7, will be working that game. So what is there to be gained by piling on to a guy? Because human nature is human nature. And human nature says that your nature becomes that of what makes you human, which means if somebody piled on and threw you under the bus, you probably have a preconceived notion in your mind of how you're going to handle a situation later on. And Scott Foster now, you would think, I don't know. But you would think Scott Foster's like, I appreciate that. Not saying that means he favors Indiana, but I'm saying the human nature of just that overall vibe going into the last 3 games, I think there was a little bit of chess play there. We'll try Chap again and see if the Chipmunks are back from a smoke break. Dustin Dopirak, 1 o'clock. You're listening to The Fan. Okay, we're going to try Mike Chappell back again because it looks like did we get the Chipmunks in order?
I think so. I think they're back.
Took away the lung darts from him?
Yeah.
Got the computer working well? Mike Chappell joins us back again. Ryan Guy's Brewery guest line is where we find him. And, Chap, we talked Pacers, so and I appreciate the patience. Let's get into the Colts now that their work is done in the mini camp. Biggest storyline or takeaway that you were thinking about on your way home that does not involve the quarterback position?
Oh, geez. Linebacker. But having said that, everything emanates from quarterback, but linebacker, Zaire Franklin and Jalen Carlisle are recovering from surgeries, ankle and shoulder. And that's the one area. What people have to understand is it's really hard to address every area in the offseason. And I thought the Colts did great things as far as addressing needs with pretty good players. And the one that they haven't, or did to this point haven't, is linebacker. They are very, very thin with proven players. You know, there's 8 or 9 linebackers, so you got players, but there's only like 12 career starts by players not named Zaire Franklin. So it's a concern. Will they both be ready for training camp? Probably, but you never know. So that's the one. If on our podcast at CBS 4 Fox 59, we were just projecting if I could have made 3 moves after the first 3 weeks of OTAs, it would have been to trade for Jermaine Pratt with the Bengals. Well, that didn't happen. He's elsewhere. Signed safety Von Bell with the Bengals last year, and I'd trade for the Raiders tight end Michael Mayer. So, and again, tight end, they're sort of iffy. I mean, realize Tyler Warren's going to be a really, really big addition, but after that, there's questions. So there's always questions about areas, but linebacker's the one that would have me losing some sleep if I'm Lou Anarumo, just because of you got to play. You know, I realize you're going to play fewer linebackers this year as far as the defense. They're going to play more DBs, but you still got to play linebackers. So I'm concerned at that area.
Mike, what about the defensive backfield? You know, that's an area that it looked like Chris Ballard made a concerted effort in the offseason to continue to strengthen that. A year ago, he said that was a unit that he needed to see them play to see what they could do. He clearly saw them play and decided to address it a little bit. Were you able to discern anything from that group, and notably from those that are new?
Yeah, I mean, again, Cam Bynum and Charvarius Ward are 2 major additions, which is something they haven't done to that extent. Now, there was always a Xavier Rhodes and a Stephon Gilmore, but these were $60 million additions, and they automatically upgrade the secondary. They're still thin at safety. They just are. Nick Cross and Bynum, that's really a good combo, but after that, the depth is suspect. Julian Blackman's still unsigned, and I don't think he won't be back. Corner, you really like what they've got there. Proven players. Jalen Jones missed some camp time with, I think it was a soft tissue, which is, hamstring, whatever. What people have to realize is when some players miss time during OTAs and mini camp, it's because they've got something that's not quite right, and they simply do not push players injury-wise in off-season workouts. Juju Brents, we talked to him the last couple of days of camp, and he's such a wild card on what to expect. As much as we've harped on how much time Anthony Richardson has missed in 2 years, Juju Brents has missed more time. And when you talk to him, he's just got what you want. He's got the aggression, he's got the size, but he can't stay on the field. And I'm not sure how you go into the season expecting much from him. But if you get something from him, it's really a good group. Kenny Moore's Kenny Moore. He's going to be a really good player still. This is a system that's going to suit him and really maximize what he can do. And again, Charvarius Ward's going to be probably the first corner. Maybe Gilmore did some, But Vontae Davis, when they put a corner on the guy on the other team's best player, and really try to shut him down. So I like the secondary. I think they're a bit thin at safety, like I mentioned with the Von Bell thing. I wouldn't mind signing him. He's a free agent. So it's one of the few. When's the last time we've said, "Hey, this secondary is pretty strong"? And one reason we can go with fewer linebackers is we've got more corners to play. So I like the group. I think this defense can be good. I'm not going great. I mean, let's not go there. But if they can get some that second-year bump from Latu, and then the same stuff from the Grover Stewarts and DeForest Buckners and Quiddy Pay, and if you get something from Samson Ebukam, which you don't know coming off the Achilles, so I like this defense. I really like what it can be. But I always default to quarterback, that if they don't get competent quarterback play, none of it matters.
Well, we know that, right? Chap, the one guy that Mike Chappell's our guest, Ryan Geist Brewery guest line, talking about the Colts. The one player that and again, I'm a cynic when it comes to mini camps and things like that, because you just never know. And there are some guys that look Drew Haddad was Jerry Rice of the offseason, right? But I did hear good things, though. Having said all that, I did hear good things about how Justin Wally, the cornerback out of Minnesota, looked. Would you concur with that, or did that not catch your eye?
Oh, it did. He made plays every day. Now, we're out there. We probably saw maybe 8 practices, maybe that many. But no, and that's what you want. Good plays, bad plays, more good than bad. But when, like there's things you can't tell in mini camps and OTAs is how's the offensive line looking. You really can't tell because they don't hit. Defensive line, you don't know. Tackling, you don't know. But like Shane Steichen said, if you can cover, you can cover. So we've seen that, and again, he's another one that adds to that group. So they've not had the greatest luck on corners over the years. I go back to the Chuck Pagano years. Was it Dejon Smith? I'm mixing my players up. Was supposed to be a great player, and he wasn't. So hit on a couple of corners.
Was he? I'm going to go off memory here. Was he out of Colorado?
I think he's the one that came in and had a list of he's going to be the best corner since whatever, and it just didn't work. And Chuck really raved about him, and it didn't work. So
Florida Atlantic, by the way, Florida Atlantic.
Okay, but this kid seems to be good. He's a little off the analytics of what they like size-wise, but sometimes your talent is just, trumps the analytics. So I like this group. I like the draft group. So again, this defense has a chance. It's got a chance to be pretty good because again, you expect Latu to make a jump. And I tell you, as much as we talked about Dwight Freeney having those almost sack moments, Latu had that last year. I think he ended up with 4 or 5 sacks, and I'm telling you, he could have doubled that had he been a split second quicker. So maybe in year 2, you react quicker. You're not thinking so much. So maybe you shave that millisecond off your performance. So I have high hopes for this defense, and that'll be a nice change from what we've seen, unfortunately, in the past.
All right. Most importantly, chap, tonight, Game 5 for the Pacers, tied at 2 games apiece. By the way, I've got a viewing party to let everybody know about. Mick Ultra Zero will be with me tonight. Nippers Grill and Tap. I will be there, 1772 East 116th Street, watching the game tonight. Chap, your prediction tonight, Pacers Game 5.
Yeah, they'll come back Game 6 down 3-2. I didn't like the way they finished that game, and I think OKC's going to be juiced at home. I hope it doesn't get away from them this game. I think everything is going to be on Game 6. How will they bounce back from their first back-to-back losses? So I wish I felt better about it, but I don't. I think this is an OKC night.
I think a lot of people probably agree, but again, it would be the first time since March 10th the Pacers have lost back-to-back games, so let's try to keep that streak alive, right?
I hear you.
So we'll see. All right, Chap, appreciate the patience as well.
Thank you.
Mike Chappell joining us, CBS 4 and WXIN Fox 59 Ryan Geist Brewery guest line. Up next, Dustin Dopirak, Indianapolis Star. He is the Pacers beat writer. We'll try to get an idea into the mindset of Indiana. What are they thinking? What's their confidence level? Has it been rattled, shaken at all? We'll find out next. we know this much. Even if the Pacers can't get it done tonight, they're still standing. They're still going to be playing a Game 6 here in Indianapolis. And it does feel like as a fan base, we've just become conditioned to like, oh, man, it's over. Well, it's with this group, you can't say that. So big one tonight, big one. Game number 5, NBA Finals. Nippers Grill and Tap is where I will be up on 116th Street in Carmel with Mick Ultra Zero. Hope to see you there. And we will do what we can to get the Pacers back into the lead in this series. Joining us now on the Rhinegeist Brewery guest line, he is in Oklahoma City. He is the beat writer for the Indianapolis Star. He is Dustin
Osterman. Dopirak.
Now,
Wow.
Now, Eddie. What are we doing here?
Dopirak.
Thank you. Dustin, who has been working along with Zach.
Dopirak.
No, the other one.
Osterman.
Thank you, in covering the Pacers.
My bad, Dustin. I
I'll
apologize.
begin with this. Talk me off the ledge, man. Talk me off the ledge, because that 45-second stretch from Benedict Mathurin in particular, absolutely, the wind was taken so out of my sails, I looked like Pascal Siakam in the corner for the last 3 minutes of that game. Tell me why I shouldn't feel that way.
Because they're them. I mean, that's the best explanation I got. I mean, my thought was, certainly, there is a chance that they come back and look at those last 4 minutes and say that's the 4 minutes that cost them a title, or 5 minutes, or 10 minutes, or wherever you want to start this, or 40 seconds, all of the above in terms of what went wrong. It certainly could end up that way. Like, I'm not going to just say that there's no chance that that's how this goes down, because they are still playing, the best team in the league. But again, it's these guys. You know what I mean? Like how many games this season have you thought, well, it's over. Okay, well, that game's over. Well, they blew this. Like, they're in trouble. They're down 20. They're down this. And they've come back and shocked you. How many times have you rolled them out and that's happened? And so, and I certainly have done it plenty. I've looked at, okay, well, there's no chance they come up from this. This is too big of a lead. This team's, like the other team they're playing is clearly in control of this game. And they found a way to pull things off. And I think, especially, Knicks in game 1, Cavs in game 2, those games were insane. Those games they had no business winning those games, and they found a way to do it. So, like, who's to say they can't do that in a series? They haven't been down in a series yet. And so it's like, you have to still remember that is their, that's their trump card. That's their superpower, is the fact that the game is never over. And, with these guys. And so, you have to consider that they're going to be able to respond. Rick Carlisle has been really, really good at diagnosing what their problem is and fixing it. So, I think there's some obvious stuff that went wrong, and that hasn't really gone wrong all series. Basically, I think they were just more stagnant than they've been at any point in the series. And like you said, Siakam was just kind of staying in the corner, and they weren't getting him the ball, and they weren't finding a way to get him involved. And, that's real rare for this group. So I think they did a lot of stuff that's not really characteristic. And the other thing that stood out to me is I felt like for a lot of game 4, they seemed to have the conditioning edge. It was weird for them to lose the fourth quarter, because it seemed to me that the Thunder are getting tired. We're getting tired, are getting tired. I don't know what to. I guess it speaks well for them strategically, because they decided after a while to not have SGA bringing the ball up and have Jalen Williams do it. And so I think Shea is getting tired. I think you're seeing real fatigue on the part of these guys. And so I think that is something that the Pacers can take advantage of as you get into Game 5 and get into Game 6 in this series. They've been wearing on this team this entire time with their pressure, making it really difficult to get the ball in, and making their best players work to get the ball down the floor. So I think they still have that as an edge. I think there's still a lot of opportunity in my eyes that they can turn this around and pull this off. And they certainly could not. The Thunder could step it up and find a way to put this thing away in a couple games. But I've seen this team do too much, prove me wrong too many times to believe that they're done and dusted now.
Dustin, I ask this out of sheer curiosity. I want to be very clear, especially in the climate that we live, that none of this is like an indictment on them. Okay, I'm genuinely curious. We knew after game number 3, when he did not play well, that Miles Turner, then it came out that Miles Turner was dealing with a respiratory, head cold / chest cold, whatever. And clearly it seemed to impact, at least in game 3, his overall stamina. those things typically are pretty contagious. In all honesty, is it possible that they're not the healthiest that they've been all year? Because I really did think it looked like for the first time I saw a Pacers team late in a game get pacered, and they looked like the ones that were dragging as opposed to Oklahoma City.
I mean, the honest answer is I don't know. I mean, I can't say that. I haven't noticed, and like yesterday, we got me and Scotty Agnes and Howard Beck and our Nate Atkins. We all got on the wrong plane. We didn't get on the wrong plane. We basically our plane got delayed in Dallas yesterday. I think a lot of it due to weather in Oklahoma City, so I didn't even get to see them yesterday. So if anyone's carrying something around, I didn't see it. So I wouldn't know, and nobody mentioned it to me. And they're like, hey, I think these guys look sick. So I really don't know. It's certainly possible. Like, obviously, a cold is contagious. Other people can get it. So, I guess it wouldn't shock me to see that and find it out. So it wouldn't blow my mind. But, it could be. But I didn't notice that. That didn't stand out to me. And none of the guys that we talked to afterwards seemed to be carrying anything. But I hadn't seen Miles very much, really since that game. So I don't even know, like, if he was showing signs or evidence, if he was coughing or, sneezing or anything like that. So I don't know. It's certainly possible. Obviously, cold is contagious. Other guys can have it, and you would think it's possible, but Thunder could have it too. So who knows? I mean, but I have yet to notice that so far. But it could be the case.
3.5-hour drive, Dallas to Oak City. How long were you delayed before you start considering it?
The problem was we got on the plane and we were on the plane for an hour before
brutal.
before they took off. There was way too much. Way too many times it was like we could do this, but there was like an immediate answer of this is next, and like I actually fell asleep on the plane, woke up and realized we hadn't taken off yet, and that it was 1:15 and that availability was starting, and I'm like, this. If I would have only known.
Yeah, it's brutal, man. There's nothing worse than when I've been on planes before where you're sitting on the runway, and I actually which is I don't typically sleep on a plane, but I'll kind of doze off, and then you wake up 20 minutes later, and you're like, wait, are we still sitting here? It's brutal.
Yeah,
the
that's
worst.
What it was. Yeah. No, it's like,
that's kind of like okay. That's what the last 4 minutes of Game 4 felt like. Like you were waiting for it to take off, and then you're like, "What's going on here?" It's been a long time since Dustin, listen. Our job, and I've said this a gabillion times, but I'll make it a gabillion and one. Our job, as you know, is to objectively opine and discuss variables of sporting events. It's been a long time since I have remembered what it's like to be a fan, to bite my fingernails, to get that accelerated heart rate, to start letting your brain go in advance of what something might actually be happening before you. And I wanted so badly for the Pacers to be up 3-1. I wanted it so badly. And I wondered if just the wind went so out of the sails of that audience that my concern is that it went out of the sails for the entire market and the team itself. What was the locker room like? What was the attitude like afterwards?
The locker room was rough. The locker room was definitely rough. I guess I don't. I guess they were capable of speaking. I guess this is the weird thing that I would say. It's like, don't get me wrong. Like, they were upset. They knew they had an opportunity, and they knew they blew it. That there's no doubt about that piece. And there was guys didn't. They kind of came in and out individually. I think we talked to Mathurin, we talked to Nemhard, and I ran back in to go talk to Halliburton afterwards. Because I wanted to see what he had to say and everything like that. I've seen worse. As far as funereal, locker rooms and stuff like that. Obviously, you see worse when it's college and they only get one shot and it's over. That's a whole different ball game. They are still aware that they have games to play, and that changes it. So you're not going to match that. But it was, they knew that they lost the opportunity. But I don't think they lost so much because, again, I think they still have wind in their sails because they've done this. You know what I mean? It's 2-2. It's not, they can't look at it and say it's over. They know they missed an opportunity, but they've also missed opportunities before. This team has screwed up enough and recovered to know that it's not dead. Like it has so much scar tissue and muscle memory and of what it takes to, mess around, screw up, like have a bad quarter, or have a bad game or whatever, and know that there's still a tomorrow, and like that goes back in so many ways. Like I've seen, like even in regular season situations where you're like, well, you got to win that game to keep yourself in this position, and you got to beat that team and prove that you can beat that team. I've seen them lose those games and come back the next night and crush somebody, and I mean, even like dumb stuff like Paris, you go and get crushed in Paris and look like an idiot. You spend a whole week on this and you get, murdered by San Antonio, and then you come back and you beat them by 30 the next night. Like they have this capacity. They've been there before. They trust their ability to make adjustments. They trust their ability to fix things and problem solve. And so they're not going to come into this thinking, they've lost all this. So, and I also think like the fan base isn't going to feel that way anyway. Like whatever happens in this one, whether they go in down 3-2 or if they rally back and they go up 3-2, like Indy's going to be alive for Game 6. Like, I mean, like, again, like maybe if they fall behind 20, then that's it. But, like Indy's going to still have a punch left in it as far as home court advantage for Game 6, regardless of what happens tonight.
By the way, Dustin, do you ever drive, I don't know what side of town you live on, but do you ever drive on 38th Street between, like, Michigan Road and if you're, like, Georgetown, if you're heading out west? Have you ever made that drive? Along Crown Hill, have you ever seen the big wall along Crown Hill Cemetery on 38th Street? Have you ever noticed that?
I think
okay.
so. I think I know what you're talking about.
That wall, my understanding is that wall 7 times in documented history since Crown Hill Cemetery opened, that wall has gone that entire stretch intact without it being crumbling or knocked down or somebody driving into it or a piece of iron rod falling off. It's one of the most bizarre phenomenons of Indianapolis. And just so you know, only, again, I believe it's either 7 or 8 times it's ever been completely intact in 146 years. Those 7 or 8 times are also the only 7 or 8 times that the DFW airport did not have delays, just so you know. Literally, every time you go into Dallas or out of Dallas, there's a thunderstorm somewhere in the state of Texas that keeps you on the ground for an extra 20 minutes. It's truly phenomenal.
That's very fair. Yeah.
Does Indiana make any sort of a schematic change for this? I mean, we're this late into it. Oklahoma City has made variation a little bit of lineup. Does Indiana do anything differently?
I'm sure they do. I mean, they're going to tweak things. And they've tweaked things the entire time. I mean, like basically it's this, it's like this randomized movement thing, but it's like they're looking and saying, okay, like what kind of, little tweak can you make or focus on this? Like, I mean, the schematic tweak, and this, it sounds obvious, but like Pascal Siakam is not getting one shot in the quarter tonight. Like that's not going to happen. Like there will be more focus on making sure that he has the ball in his hands and you take advantage of some of his matchups, because he's been an interesting matchup. I think the whole time I've never been sure, like, okay, well, who does the Thunder use to guard him? And he's won a lot of those matchups, and I think it's looking at it like, all right, like this has to be intentional. And I think that's a lot of like what comes down to like their schematic tweaks are basically deciding what they're going to be intentional about, and saying, okay, like keep this in mind. Like you guys, you're trying to play random. You're not trying to be very easily diagnosable, but like every once in a while you have to look and say, okay, well, this is a thing we got away from, and you just have to keep it in your mind to make sure it happens. And so that's going to be one key thing. Like they're not going to change the lineup. Like that doesn't. They're not going to change their starting lineup. They like their starting 5. I don't think they have any reason to change their starting 5. I mean, there might be some reason why you play. Maybe there are minutes for Thomas they're missing. If there's some kind of tweak that the Thunder make or whatever, or a lineup that they put out there, they might find him a few more minutes just to make sure there's somebody to block out Chet or something like that. But I don't see anything dramatic. Again,
yeah, they got to keep Chet Holmgren from crashing the glass like that from the wing. I mean,
right, exactly. That's one of the big things I think that stood out. When you I went back and watched the fourth quarter, and I think just to see, okay, what went wrong here, and I was waiting to see like something the Thunder did to like take something away. And you don't really see that. You just see this kind of stagnance. But like if you're like, okay, what's the big problems? Where did they miss here? One of them is you have one of those, Chet running in from the wing and nobody marks him. And so it's like, yeah, mark the 7'1" guy. Remember that. He's good at that. Like that might be a smart decision. You might want to put a body on the really tall, really skinny guy. You might be able to slow him down. That could help.
Lastly, Dustin, I want to get your thoughts on this, and I know that you have heard this because you would have been in there when it happened, but for the audience, we're going to play here, Dustin, so be patient with me for 30 seconds or so. After game number 4, and there was so much discussion about Scott Foster, the extender, the official that it's become in vogue in the NBA to say, this is the guy that Adam Silver sends in to make sure that series are extended or to call for one way or another. And apparently there was a fan that he had removed that made comment about Tim Donahue, the official who was, of course, indicted for gambling improprieties while an NBA official, and he made phone calls during that time to Scott Foster, although Foster was never implicated and was cleared of investigation. Rick Carlisle had this to say about Scott Foster recently.
I think it's awful some of the things I've seen about the officiating, and Scott Foster in particular. I've known Scott Foster for 30 years. He's a great official. He's done a great job in these playoffs. We've had him a lot of times. And the ridiculous scrutiny that's being thrown out there is terrible and unfair and unjust and stupid.
Okay, Dustin, is that Rick Carlisle sticking up for, a friend or a colleague? He did not make any challenges, did Rick Carlisle, in Game 4. There were a couple of calls that were probably questionable, but is that Rick Carlisle being loyal, or is that Rick Carlisle playing chess?
I think it's both. I mean, I don't want to say one of the. I mean, I don't think. I think Rick, like you've seen Rick. This is the second, and somebody pointed this out. It's obviously the second time in this series, but it frequently happens that Rick will just come in and stand up for people. Like Rick doesn't like to see people that are sort of established, like in his mind, professionals catch a lot of heat. I mean, obviously stepped up for Doris Burke earlier in the series. He always steps up for whatever coach just got fired, and I think he views that as kind of his role as the leader of the NCBA. But I think he just views it that way. He doesn't like to see some of the commentary that comes down on people, and the way sort of NBA Twitter or NBA commentary can just get out of hand and wild, and sometimes go so far as to be conspiratorial. And so like I imagine he saw the Bill Simmons comments comment was like I can't remember, it was an abomination. And I think and coaches and players definitely view this on a different level than any of us do. Like they definitely see this differently. In terms of how a game is officiated, you think when you just see them being animated that they think everything is wrong. And that's not necessarily the case. That's not always the case. And they know, they judge officials differently in terms of how, like how they operate and what they say and all that kind of thing. And we just don't kind of know, but he's made a point to do this. But like, to the other thing is like, yeah, it probably is a smart move on your part if you're a coach to be like, hey, like, even though, like everybody, all these fans on my side are saying that, you're terrible. I didn't say so. Just remember that. Remember, I don't think you suck, Scott. So, there's certainly a chance that Scott Foster gets another assignment in these finals. I think, there's sort of a lot of talk about like if there's a Game 7, he'll get it. And will that help? Probably. And I think, obviously Carlisle's played both sides of that fence when it's come to officiating. He certainly in the Knicks series last year was saying, hey, a small market team's got to be able to get some calls in this building. It cannot be this dramatically unfair. And so, like there's obviously this huge narrative in terms of among just like I said on NBA Twitter or just fan Twitter or whatever, talking about how the NBA wants this and the NBA wants that, and so the officiating is designed to make it happen. I have no idea if that's true. I don't know if players and coaches think it's true. But like I certainly get why Rick Carlisle would want to push back against that and say that's not really the case, because I think he just doesn't like that idea that this is all fixed and the NBA is just deciding who wins the finals every year. I don't think you certainly don't want that for the game, but I think also if you're Rick and you're probably going to see Scott Foster again, you probably don't want him thinking that you agree with any of that.
Okay, lastly, any health update from the Pacers, notably Jarris Walker, I know we can probably now say is not going to play in these finals. I know he's off crutches, but I watched him in Game 4 walking around. He is still noticeably limping. Aside from that, anything of note health-wise, notably Miles Turner and his illness?
No, I mean, I would think Miles sounded like he was, just by say sounding, I mean, I read the transcripts. It seems like he's coming along and feeling better. Tyrese Halliburton still, I imagine he's still getting treatment for the ankle, but, he's obviously been able to play through it for a couple games and been okay. It hasn't been noticeable to my eye anyway that was the thing, and it seems like it's been relatively minor, but I mean, I know, at least through game 4, he was still getting treatment for it. I imagine he probably still is, but that doesn't, it seems like that treatment has been enough for him to be fine through that, and that's just about all of it. And like you said, Walker doesn't look like he's gonna play in the playoffs. There's just not a whole lot of time for him to recover at this point, even if it does go to seven games. So that would seem to be the end of it. But otherwise, everybody seems to be coming through okay.
All right, Dustin, best of luck getting back for game number 6. 3.5-hour drive to Dallas if you need to make that if you're delayed, just so you know.
Sounds good. I will consider it. Appreciate it, man.
Appreciate it. Dustin Dopirak joining us on the Rhinegeist Brewery guest line. We come back. There is another team in the area, one that is back on to full strength, I guess you'd say. Eddie Garrison can enlighten us on that. And some optimism for all of you about the Pacers. I've got good news for you. Got good news for you that I'm going to read for you. We'll do it all next. Okay, Eddie, enlighten me on this. You are the pre- and post-game host of the Indiana Fever broadcasts on the radio that you hear here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. The latest, I admittedly have been obviously very engrossed between the Pacers, and then on Friday I went to the game, got done with the game on Friday night, the Pacers game I'm talking about, which was still a magical evening. I mean, no question. Then got done with the game, went home, got everything ready, and then drove over to St. Louis. Got to St. Louis at about 4:15 in the morning Eastern time, 3:15, got up, and then, of course, encountered rain delays yesterday. Had the race last night, the Worldwide Technology Raceway. Kyle Kirkwood, the winner, his third win of the year, then came back, and I'm back here. So I obviously know that Caitlin Clark is back. That's good news for the Fever, and they have some opportunity in front of them, correct?
Yes, they do. So they win on Saturday against the New York Liberty, handing the Liberty their first loss of the season, 102-88 final score there. Caitlin was sensational in that game, 32 points, 9 assists, 8 rebounds, 2 blocks, and a steal. She stuffed the stat sheet in every statistical category possible, including had a stretch where she had 3 consecutive near 30-footers. I know 2 for a fact were over 30 feet. And it was just absolutely electric inside Gainbridge Fieldhouse. And with that win on Saturday over New York, if they win tomorrow night, that coverage starting at 6:45 with the voice you're listening to right now here on The Fan with the pregame coverage against the Connecticut Sun. That game is at Gainbridge Fieldhouse, 7 o'clock tip. John Nolan and Bria Goswell, the play-by-play of that. If they win that game tomorrow night, then they are hoping for the Atlanta Dream to lose to the New York Liberty, because that is the 5th and final WNBA Commissioner's Cup game for all 3 teams. And since it is a head-to-head determining tiebreak, if the Liberty defeat the Dream, then the Indiana Fever will be in the WNBA Commissioner's Cup championship game as the representative of the Eastern Conference. And if the Dream defeat the Liberty, then the Fever will not be playing for the WNBA Commissioner's Cup championship game on July the 1st.
Do you think last year's in-season tournament for the Pacers assisted them this year?
Oh, 100%. I think so, yeah.
I think it did also, because this year they did not, that as a matter of fact.
I'll even say this year's assisted them a little bit too.
Well, here's
even though
the
they
thing.
didn't make it.
Yeah, here's the thing. They had the benefit of getting to the finals of that tournament last year, and it's the inaugural one, and it did feel like a big deal. That game with the Lakers felt like the entire country. It felt like the NBA Finals. I mean, honestly. And this year, let me ask you this, Eddie, and you'll probably know this off the top of your head. And it would take. Matter of fact, see if I can guess this.
Okay.
And I know it's now called like the Emirates Cup or whatever.
Emirates NBA Cup, yes.
The in-season tournament this year. I'm going to see if I can tell you the 2 teams that were the finals of that. Are you ready?
Uh-huh.
The Milwaukee Bucks.
Yep.
And Oklahoma City?
Yep.
And which one won?
That would be Oklahoma City.
Okay. But my point being, when you're in it, it feels like everyone's paying attention. Then when your team's not in it, you're like, oh, wait a minute. Maybe people were not paying as much attention to that as I thought.
Oh, sorry. No, it was Milwaukee. Milwaukee won. That's right.
Milwaukee won it.
Yeah, Milwaukee did win it. Yeah.
Here's good news for the Pacers. This from our friend Mark Monteith, who I think is as good a historian of the franchise as anybody in the market locally, and has covered them for, he was a beat writer for them. He's a guy that, is going to lunch on a regular basis with some of the old guard, that kind of thing. The last 4 minutes of the Pacers' loss to OKC in Game 4 could go down in history as the most influential in franchise history. Might wind up costing them the first championship in their NBA history. The best thing they have going for them now is their history. It's a weird dynamic. I'm reading you what Monteith wrote. It's a weird dynamic, but the vast majority of the franchise's great playoff moments have come on the road. All 3 ABA titles were clinched there. They could have won 2 of them at home, but couldn't handle the moment. Reggie Miller saved most of his classic postseason performances for the road. particularly at Madison Square Garden. Sorry, I lost my place here where I was reading.
Madison Square Garden.
Thank you. And Philadelphia. And of the 24 NBA playoff series the Pacers have won, 13 were clinched on the road. As with investing, past performance does not necessarily indicate future results, but it wouldn't be out of character for them to do it on the road. You know, there's a lot of truth to that. And there is something about, I have said this before. I was never an NBA athlete. I was never a big-time Division I athlete. But I've been on teams, and I've been on teams that were pretty good, and I've been on teams that when we got off the bus, people were there. Now, I was a Gumby on these teams, but I was on the bus and on the team nonetheless. I've been on teams where when you got off the bus, you had the feeling that everybody there wanted to see you get off the bus because they're like, I've heard how good these guys are. And there's an element of, with those games, that I always personally enjoyed the away games almost more, because that's where you feel this connection and this bond amongst your teammates, and it tightens you a little bit because it's truly at that point you against the world. You know, if you are a Pacer fan, and anybody listening to my voice right now, certainly right now is a Pacer fan, right, in this town, or you get what I mean by that. I've always felt, for me personally as a Pacers fan, growing up and watching them forever, the games that I always enjoyed the most watching are the late-night West Coast games when they're playing in Los Angeles or Portland or Phoenix, and they're down 8 in the fourth quarter and they come roaring back, and you watch it and they win by 3, and it's 12:30 at night here in Indianapolis, and you're going to bed on a Tuesday night in January, and you feel this connection to the team because you're like, yeah, I'm one of the fans that stayed up to watch this. And like, that's, you're envisioning other people around town that also, like you, stayed up late that night. And there's an element of fun to that makes you feel tighter as a group and as a fan base and as a team. And I think there's an element of that when it comes to, even at the NBA level, players that they get on the plane, they go, and it truly is, okay, guys, now we're banded together as a group. And they're going to need that, admittedly. They're going to need that. It's every game from here out, we're going to say, you're going to hear me say with every one of them, this is the biggest game of the year. But this now becomes the biggest game of the season, because not only, now sure, this is not an elimination game, but I think many people felt like Game 4 was their elimination game, that if they would have won that game, as I said then, their toe was in the water if they won that game of being within taste of a championship. And they have won in Oklahoma City. You know they can do that. It's going to be tough as hell. Game 1, they were beaten for the vast majority of that game, and then it was heroics at the end of the game that bailed them out. Game 2, they were beaten pretty soundly throughout the course of the game. I mean, you never really felt like they were in that game. Game 3, obviously, we know how great that was. They got the win. In Game 4, they controlled most of the game. Oklahoma City's the one that has to feel like now they kind of stole one. So you know that if you're Oklahoma City, maybe you're saying to yourselves, look, they're lucky to have stolen one there, but the Pacers outplayed them for 7 quarters out of the last 8. Well, in Oklahoma City outplayed the Pacers for 7 of 8 quarters. You got to flip the script now. Got to flip the script. In terms of the assembly of this team and putting teams together, I think it's applicable not just for this team, but for work in general. And a guy that many people probably don't realize was a part of that in developing the character and studying and analyzing it, not just for players, and I'm not talking about when they're coming out of college. I'm talking about if you are looking to make a trade or watching somebody who's played within the NBA. How do you determine who would or who wouldn't work within what it is you're trying to do? One of the guys that was in charge of figuring those things out and reporting back to the Pacers, because he was a scout for him at the NBA level. Pat Knight going to join us in 20. Pacers conversation about 15 minutes from now. Here's the good news.
Is Michael from Australia making the trip?
Excellent question. Michael has, on 2 occasions, told me that he had told me that if they go to the finals, he was absolutely coming. But he's had some work things come up where he's like, I just cannot get away. And I still think.
I'm sure that's eating at him.
Trust me. I think it is for sure. I still believe, I do not rule out the possibility that if they win tonight, then he will get on a plane tomorrow and be here for Game 6 and buy a ticket somehow. But Marcus, his son, the Australian, admits they're on winter break right now from school, but he is playing basketball down there also. So there's that factor. But that is when people ask you, Eddie, your favorite song, people say, what's your favorite song all time? What do you say?
I don't have one in particular.
I know. Give me your 5.
Oh gosh, that's still even a stretch.
Because that's one of mine right there, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Down Under probably is the one that I most often say is my all-time favorite song from when I was a kid. And still, every time I hear it, it puts me in a good mood. And every time I hear it, there's like one little like nostalgic, like I can immediately put myself back into a place somewhere. But then like Bittersweet Symphony's very high on my list of all-time favorite songs. Bad by U2 is all-time hot, is up there. Like a Rolling Stone by Bob Dylan. That might be the biggest uplift song. We need to play Like a Rolling Stone just because like the opening riff of it puts you in a good mood and lifts you up. And like it's kind of cloudy out in the Pacers. Nobody really knows what's going to happen tonight. But at any rate, twice, not once, but twice on my iPod Shuffle on my drive back from St. Louis last night, that song played. Down Under did.
I just lost a lot of respect for you, by the way.
Why's that?
Saying Bob Dylan has a song that's one of your favorites. That's
Excuse me?
You like whiny music? Hey,
You clearly have never heard Like a Rolling Stone.
I have. I just heard it over the weekend, and it put me to sleep.
Excuse me?
I was on a boat yesterday, and it was playing, and it literally put me to sleep.
No, hold on. Listen. Go ahead and play for me right now the open to Like a Rolling Stone by Bob Dylan. You can't tell me this is going to put you to sleep. I mean, this is the whole thing of this transitioned him from the whiny into using electricity musician.
No.
Okay, hold on. Through the bumps of time in your prime.
No.
Didn't you? I mean, who does? Come on. No. People call to say, beware, doll, you finally thought they were all kidding you. I mean, come on. Everybody's doing it in their car, Eddie.
No.
This song is an immediate uplift, like, let's go. No. Yes.
No.
I don't dispute to you about Bob Dylan in a lot of his older songs, but this is the song that literally the people that loved him for the reason you're talking about got angry at him because he plugged in to play that song. Song's awesome. It's one of the great songs of all time. One of the great songs of all time. Anyway, last night on the way back, Worldwide Technology Raceway in St. Louis for the IndyCar race. We don't talk a lot of IndyCar on the program, but primarily because in road and street courses, I think sometimes there's not a lot to talk about, truth be told, and Alex Palou has been so dominant. But there have only been 2 drivers so far this season to win a race. Palou would be one. The other would be the guy that won last night, Kyle Kirkwood, who is really starting to and there's been a lot of, this is not a fluke. This is a guy that has been on the radar as a rising star within IndyCar for quite some time. He's come up and dominated through each ladder of the road to Indy, so the minor leagues, if you will, and now here he is. But that was Eddie, you, I think, on 3 different occasions, pointed out last night that you were entertained by watching that race under the lights.
I was, Jake. I think the first text I sent you was about the Joseph Newgarden accident.
Yep.
Because that was pretty scary / gnarly. I think it was the word I used in our text message. And then I texted you, I think, after the race, and I was like, that was the best race of the season so far. And it was probably one of my favorite races in a long time.
Yeah,
it's not an Indy 500.
Couple of things here. Number one, and I get this question a lot. Last night was an example. Why is IndyCar not racing more on the ovals? Why do we not see more ovals? Because it's breathtaking. I don't care. You don't have to be a race fan. When you see those cars side by side, you can swipe a credit card between them, right? It's pretty breathtaking. And there were some great racing moments in that race. The Connor Daly battle with Pato O'Ward.
Christian Rasmussen just, carving up the field.
Yeah, Christian Rasmussen, that guy is fearless driving for ECR for Ed Carpenter. He's fearless. And at one point, he had made up 15 spots, and I went down and asked Ed Carpenter, I'm like, you got to be happy about that. And he said, yeah, well, actually what happened is he came in and we had a problem with the fuel, so we didn't get time to do proper fuel, so it was a quick stop. That moved him up the spots a little bit. Then he had to come back in and refuel, and then a caution came out in their favor, so it broke their way. Lady Luck was on their side. But that kid, Christian Rasmussen, is not afraid to put his car anywhere it needs to go. Here's the challenge with the ovals and the situation with running on ovals. Road and street courses, and for those that are unfamiliar, a road course is a permanent fixture. It is a course that is built with left and right-handed turns specifically to host racing. A street course is a temporary course that utilizes city streets in, within a city. Either one of those, primarily street course races, Toronto, Long Beach, St. Pete, people go to that because it's an event and it's downtown and whatever else, and you sell tickets to even non-race fans go just because it's an event and a celebration and you get a turkey leg and a beer and you walk around, etc. For ovals, in order to buy a ticket to go to watch an oval race, specifically, that means you are, in fact, a fan of racing. You're there just to see a race. And you are limiting the number of tickets you can sell versus, and it's also not as big an area. So in a street course race for Long Beach, you can sell 110,000 tickets because it's spread out over a downtown area and you got all these families walking around and everything else. So from a ticket standpoint, I think street course or road course advantage ticket sales. But from a television standpoint, advantage ovals because it's better optics. You're side by side. It's exciting. It's awesome. There has been skepticism about the ovals and the audience because of the lack of attendance that they have seen over the years at Kentucky and Chicagoland and places like that. The numbers started to wane of people that were showing up. Last night was a big test for IndyCar because the Worldwide Technology Raceway, formerly known as Gateway, which is right on the Illinois side of St. Louis, Bomarito Automotive Group, which is, that's the Hubler Automotive Group of St. Louis. That's the big civically involved, car dealer, Bomarito. And the Bomarito Automotive Group is the title sponsor of that event, and they do a great job of promoting it. But the attendance had started to wane. And there was some question about what the long-term viability at that facility was for IndyCar. And then last night, they said, let's move it then to a Sunday night, under the lights, essentially unimpeded, and see what we can get in terms of audience. And it was supported. There were a lot of people there. It was a good crowd. A very good crowd. And so, and then a good race. The other thing I want to point out, Joseph Newgarden, those cars, it is amazing to think that a car that's going 170 miles an hour, Louis Foster made contact with the wall and slid down and slid right in front of Newgarden. There was nowhere Newgarden, who was leading the race and probably on his way to dominating for a sixth win at that track. There's nowhere that Newgarden could go. So he basically T-bones Louis Foster, gets airborne, his car flips, lands on the halo, which is the windscreen. I say halo, it's a windscreen. Lands on that, and that keeps Joseph Newgarden's helmet from landing on the pavement, and he slides upside down. My mom was like, oh my gosh, his car was on fire, which is what it looked like. Those were sparks just from him sliding along. And Newgarden and Louis Foster both go to the infield care center and walk out under their own power and fine. Literally fine. I'm sure they were sore, don't get me wrong, but they were fine. Foster admitted to the fact that, he just his car got into the marbles, which is the rubbery part of the racetrack where it's slippery. He lost control. That spun him around. Nowhere Newgarden could go. Newgarden did not speak, came out of the infield care center, and was gone. I mean, you could tell the level of disappointment and frustration on his face. Should he have stopped to give a comment? Yeah, probably. Or at the very least, his appreciation for the AMR safety team who was there immediately to the car. He should have done that, but he did not. I'm sure the frustration was there. But either way, scary accident and certainly visually a dramatic accident, but both of them walked away okay. Now it's on to Road America, which is up in Wisconsin and an area where a ton of people from the Indianapolis area go to camp and watch the race. And that's going to be, hopefully, on a night with a Game 7. Unless the Pacers win tonight and come back and win in Game 6, don't get me wrong. But if there's a Game 7 that night, we'll see how that comes into play. As for the way this Pacers team was built and what makes them special, one of the guys that was in charge of finding out the intel background personalities of some of these players joins us next. Now, I'm not saying I'm suspicious here, okay? But Pat Knight and I go back a long ways, right?
Yeah.
I think people that listen to this show know that Pat Knight and I go a long way. Go back a long way, I mean. And it all began when, and I'll tell it again real quick.
Back in your day.
That's right, back a million years ago. When I went to, I grew up a huge IU fan, obviously, but when I began my college career at the University of Kansas. And after my freshman year of Kansas, which was about like the Hindenburg, I came home. I spent a year at home. I went to IUPUI, which I, in hindsight, really appreciate the experience that gave me and just kind of the reset, if you will, and then transferred to IU Bloomington. So myself, my buddy Marcus Walton, who now lives in Auckland, New Zealand, Marcus Turner, as he goes by now, we moved down to Bloomington together, and we're like, okay, let's get an apartment. So we just got an apartment. Let's go meet the neighbors. And we walk next door. Literally, it's Kramer and Jerry. Except for it wasn't a building. It was one of those apartments where you open the door and there's a foyer with A, B, C, and D, like 4 apartments, 2 up, 2 down. And so we go next door to meet the neighbors, knock on the door, and Pat Knight opens the door. And Pat Knight opens the door, and we're like, hey, your neighbor. He's like, hey, I'm your neighbor. We're your neighbor. Obviously, we knew who Pat Knight was. Pat's roommate was Ryan Carr, who is now the director of player personnel for the Pacers, was the director of scouting for the Pacers, and Pat Knight worked for, I don't know, a decade or so, living in Las Vegas as the West Coast scout for the Pacers. Now, that doesn't mean that he was in charge of scouting like college players at UNLV and places like that. His initial role was that he was an NBA scout. So if there was a player that the Pacers were contemplating acquiring, then he was the one that was in charge of getting background intel on said player. And that's important because, and he's not the only one. They have other scouts that are in this vein. But when you look at some of the key players for this Pacers team, yes, Ben Shepherd is homegrown. Ben Matherin is homegrown. Andrew Nembhard is homegrown. But they traded for Tyrese Halliburton. They traded for Obi Toppin. They traded for Pascal Siakam. They signed through free agency Tony Bradley. They traded for Thomas Bryant. And when you think about meshing personalities, how did you know and what was the work done to know that those guys were all going to work, and what did you see in their game or their personalities that tipped you off? Now, I say all that because that was Pat's job, and I thought he'd be perfect to come on and talk about it. Pat's not going to give us the Rick Fox treatment, is he? Rick Fox, who literally was like, all right, call me in 30 minutes, and then we did, and Rick Fox was nowhere to be found. So Pat went to voicemail, right?
Yes.
Now, and this is why I love Pat. So me yesterday, I'm going to read you the text exchange with Pat Knight, right?
Okay.
Any chance you could come on tomorrow? I'm interested in the background of knowing personalities and character when building a team. Thumbs up emoji. Me. What time is good for you? 1 or 2? Pat. 2 p.m. Cool. Call you then. Pat. Sounds good. Now that's it. Now, Pat, come on. Do you think he's hanging out with Rick Fox?
Did you clarify
Should I
time
call
zone?
Rick Fox? Should I text Rick Fox again and be like, dude, we're still Hail Marrying. Let's get Rick Fox. Rick Fox has become like Matt Damon being bumped on, which show was it that used to always joke? Is it Kimmel that used to always joke that Matt Damon got bumped?
I think so.
This should become a running gag on the program about Rick Fox until we can get Rick Fox on the show. But Pat can't Rick Fox us, right? I'm sending him the number to call in. He's probably at like some sort of an Elvis convention. I'm not kidding when I tell you that. But what I want to see tonight, what I want to see first off is this kind of the same things that I said that I was hoping to see in past games. Notably, I want to see Siakam involved. And, you know, at some point we're going to have, and I realize he's been under the weather, but at some point are we going to get the Miles Turner breakout game? We've seen Halliburton have heroics. I think Siakam's had some pretty good efforts. We've had the Mathurin breakout game. We had the Toppin game where, you know, he really delivered for them. Turner's the last one in terms of guys that get a game that is the breakout where you say, okay, that was the game. And I get it. He's been under the weather. I totally get it. And my concern, to an extent, crazy as it sounds, and again, I don't want to necessarily go complete tinfoil hat here, okay? But no matter what line of work you're in, you're a realtor, you're a dentist, you're a teacher. No matter what line of work you're in, everybody has it where you come home and somebody says, like, well, you look tired. You go, yeah, I mean, I'm fine. There's something going around at work. We had it in here like 2 weeks ago. And I'm not trying to get into some, you know, 2020 COVID mask mandate conversation. That's not what I'm talking about at all. I'm just talking about every year, especially during seasonal change, and maybe it is like a variant. Maybe I have no idea. All I know is a common cold seems to have been going around lately. Like a 2-day. I mean, I think you guys probably noticed. I mean, J&V had it for a couple days. I had more of just like a cough for maybe a day, just like a kind of annoying sinus thing. Is it something? Yeah, maybe. I have no idea. All I know is this. When it happens, like in a workplace here, there were probably 5 or 6 of us here that are around each other regularly, and it was almost like a take turns type deal. And Miles Turner, we know, after game 1 and 2, when he was not playing well, we found out that Miles Turner had, and I think they even said upper respiratory, and that he was just having problems getting his wind. Game 3, I'm sorry, it was game 3 really where he was off, and you found out that Miles Turner was under the weather. I thought, and I have no idea if these two things are related. Probably not. But let me explain what happened on Friday night, and everybody knows it by now. I totally understand and appreciate and respect the narrative from people about Scott Foster. The series extender, I get it. I get why people are skeptical. I totally understand and appreciate and respect the thought process from people of, man, so many times in that situation going into it, I was so excited, and it just felt like what we've seen in the past of, like, I think people were going in waiting for that, like, piano that was hanging by fish string above you as you walk down the street going into that game. I get all of it. And the Pacers jumped out to a 20-12 lead. The threes were going. Gamebridge was so loud, and the defense chants were so loud, and it's a Friday night, and it literally felt like we were about to see the roof and the window and everything just blown out of Gamebridge Fieldhouse into this undeniable, like, atmosphere and civic celebration of the Pacers going up in that series. And then in the last 4 minutes of the game, the wind went out of the building and the gears slowed down. And literally, for the first time, it felt like the Pacers got a taste of their own medicine, and it was Oklahoma City. And this stunned me. But it was Oklahoma City that looked like they won the endurance contest. And they looked tired. Maybe it was power of suggestion. But at one point, I texted, Amp Harris was sitting down the way from me, and I texted Amp, and I said, Oklahoma City looks tired. And he said, I just said the same thing. And, you know, I was saying to the people around me, you could see it already. Like, they went, Halliburton was on the bench for a long time, and Rick Carlisle went with his reserves on a couple of occasions for a long time. And so you're sitting there waiting for it, and you are anticipating that Oklahoma City's going to hit a wall. And it happened to the Pacers. It happened in the last 4 minutes. Not just not hitting shots, but also just like mental fatigue errors. They had no movement offensively. They weren't whipping that ball around like they typically were. Siakam was literally the gear that like was rusted over in the corner. And Mathurin had the worst 45 seconds of basketball ever. I mean, 2 off-ball fouls that gave Oklahoma City a free throw on the ball. And then on top of that, the 3 of 4 missed free throws from Mathurin, which were absolutely maddening. And this is coming off of, obviously, a great performance that he'd had the game before, but it was so frustrating. And it did make me wonder all of that if there wasn't, and I'm not trying to make excuses for them, but was there a bug going around? And did other players get the illness of Miles Turner? That sounds ridiculous, but I can't help the fact that I thought it. Pat Knight does join us now. And here's the thing. I'll bet Pat was listening to Elvis and lost track of time. That's my guess. Is that right, Pat?
No, I have a team camp. My fault. I totally forgot.
You had a team meeting, you said?
No, team camp. We got team camp over
Gotcha.
at Marion. So I got 13 high school teams over here.
That's
I
cool.
watched some recruits play. But that's also what you get when you text me last night, like at 9 o'clock. I was kind of half asleep.
Sorry about that. And listen,
I thought it's like a booty call, man.
Hey, give me credit. I was texting you. I was in St. Louis calling the IndyCar race and texting you at the same time. So I lost track of time myself. So, you know, hey.
Yeah, man, I'm glad I finally checked my phone. Yeah, I was in.
Now, hang on. Now, Pat, are you in a cave, Pat? Because our connection's terrible. All right, hang on. Eddie, put him on hold. We're going to do this in installments here. I'll let Eddie work with them and see if he either can get on the landline or we'll call him back in a couple minutes. This is what we do on live radio. But yes, anyway, I was genuinely curious when it came to the Pacers. That thought entered my mind of like, man, it just seemed un-Pacer-like in the last 4 minutes where their fatigue was unlike anything that we had seen before, and they just came to a stall, and it was frustrating. Now, this team is different, though, in their resolve. They have not lost back-to-back games since March 10th, and they seem to just have a resolve about them. And the reason why I, in fact, did call Pat Knight last night is this. So we got Pat back. Pat, I appreciate it. I wanted to talk to you about this, and we'll get to what you're doing with Marion here in a minute. But for those that don't know, you know, your job, and I can't remember for how many years it was that you were doing it, but what was your exact title in terms of the scouting department for the Pacers?
Well, I was just a scout, but so I was a college scout the first 3 years, so that was everything at the draft. The middle 4, I was an NBA scout, so I was involved with everything with free agency and trades. And my last 3 years, I was back to being a college scout. And so when I was doing the college stuff, I was in charge of the West Coast, so I had Texas all the way over. And then when I was doing the NBA scouting, I had the whole Western Conference.
Okay, so I want to get to let's begin with the NBA scouting part of it because, you know, I'm fascinated by this. You watched, for example, you know, you grew up underneath watching the way that, say, your dad built teams, okay? And oftentimes you would get a guy, and I'm going to use like Brian Sloan. So you get a guy that was a great high school player, that was a state player of the year. Then he comes to Indiana, and he has the ability to say, I'm going to sacrifice the points because what the team needs me to do is be a screener, be a rebounder, be a defender. I have a role within my team. It takes special people to have to buy into that and understand the role of letting other people get glory. This Pacers team seemingly has that, but when you were scouting at the NBA level and you're scouting potential free agents or trades, what characteristics did you look for that either told you a guy would or wouldn't work? What was it that you were looking for that the average fan would not notice?
Well, I mean, it worked both ways. We did it both for college too, because what you want, we call glue guys, or we'd always say in our meetings, you got to have somebody to take the garbage out. And so, from our standpoint, we try to. You get to the game as early as you can, watch how they warm up or they do their individual work. We watch them in regular warm-up lines, how they interact with the players, their personality, and then we watch them on the bench. And a lot of times we'd like to see a guy, NBA-wise, have a bad game. How does he react with the coaches? How's he, if he's having a bad game, does he not get up and cheer for his teammates? And so we actually watch the bench when they're on the bench as much as we do when we watch them when they're playing, and how they interact with the coach when they get taken out. Is he making faces? Is he popping off to the coach? And so we kind of watch the whole deal. It's not just when he's in the game. We watch the whole deal when we go to those games. The same thing is when we college, we're able to go to practices doing the college scouting, and it's just the body language. And just how they interact with their teammates, how they interact with the coaches, how they interact with the managers, and was always a huge part for us to try to figure out from a personality standpoint. But then, we also have a sports psychologist that puts them through a test that can actually tell you what type of, if he's an A personality, B personality, that type of deal. So so we actually put them through that also.
Are there players currently on the roster, Pat, that you directly remember scouting or watching them before they were a Pacer?
Oh, yeah. I mean, for me, like on the roster now, Halliburton, when I was doing all the pro stuff, Siakam in college, Shepard in college, Mathurin in college, James Johnson when I was doing the NBA stuff, Nembhard and Walker, of course, when at college, McConnell when I was in college. So pretty much seen everybody on that roster, either when I was doing the college stuff or the NBA stuff.
Was there a specific thing? We'll go with Halliburton, okay? So Halliburton, I don't know if it was when he was with Sacramento or at Iowa State or both that you were observing him. Give me
Sacramento.
Okay, so Sacramento. So you're watching him as an NBA player who knows whether or not he was ever going to become a Pacer. Is that the kind of thing where they say to you, "Hey, Pat, do us a favor. We're interested in this guy. Can you specifically watch him?" Or would you just watch teams and make notation and then just hand a huge list and then it's up to them to pick it out? Can you take me kind of through how Halliburton got on the radar for Indiana?
So it's the both with college and NBA. So we'd meet as NBA staff, and back then there was just two of us. Vance Catlin now, who's director of the pro scouting, he had the East Conference, I had the West, and then we'd meet with Chad Buchanan, who's still our GM, and so we come up with a list with the free agents that are available, and then go over each roster in the NBA. Start with the free agents first on each team. Who would you have an interest in? Then, are there any other players from a trade standpoint that you're interested in? And that would be our list. And I mean, Halliburton from the get-go, because Vance had been doing the NBA stuff just by himself until they moved me over to help him. I mean, right when we got to the Sacramento roster, I mean, he and Chad, they were on Halliburton from the get-go. And so So when I went out there, it was just, concentrate on Halliburton. And then, you're always allowed to add somebody if you see somebody in the free agent category, just a player you like to keep an eye on. But they knew right from the get-go. They really had an interest in Halliburton. So it's not like, they just came upon him. No, they were trying to get him for years. And Sacramento just never would bite or even take their calls on him forever until, we got the Sabonis deal going and everything. But no, they knew you got to give Chad and Vance and Kevin Pritchard credit. It wasn't like I went to a game and was like, oh, how about this kid? No, they were pretty zeroed in on him right from the start. And so that's why when we got him, I was shocked. I was on a plane, getting off the plane, and it came across my phone that we had traded for him because we had tried so hard. Chad and KP were making, calls trying to get involved with him, and they wouldn't even sometimes take their calls. And so they've been wanting him for a long time, and that's why it was so great when we finally got him.
When a guy gets on the radar like that, Pat, when it's on the team's radar and you begin really scouting it, is it more important to look for reasons to validate your interest or more important to look for reasons why you should back away?
It's a little of both, but we KP early on, he was always great. Even when I started, he was general manager and Bird was the president. And I remember him coming to our first meetings and just when he was GM saying, sometimes we get too caught up in what the kid can't do. What can he do? That's the main thing. And so I was kind of taught through them to be more, I guess, positive with these guys. Like, what do they bring to the table? And because we can kind of figure out what they don't do, but what do they bring? And then the personality thing is huge for them. And because we can't, you can't really have it. You can't. We're in a small market. And then after what everything happened with the fight, way back in the day in Detroit and everything, you have to be careful in a small market. You can't hide. Players can't hide here. There's like one club or two places they can actually go out, and so it was kind of interesting when I was working for the Pacers. We spent a lot of time on background checks. Our intel is almost like the part of, are they a good enough player and do they fit, was the easy part. Is the intel part, can they, live in Indianapolis? Can they, behave? Because you can't hide in Indianapolis. It's a small market, and so it's not like L.A. or New York. Shoot, you can go, do a bag of coke and probably kill somebody in some of those cities and hide it. You can't.
I would think now, just for the record, I would think both those things eventually you'd get caught, right?
Yeah, I think. But in Indianapolis, you can't really jaywalk if you're a pro athlete. And people not know about it. And so that was one of the things with Halliburton that kept coming back. Just what his personality just radiated. When you go see him play, you talk to other assistants, other people in the league, and then when Carlisle came, he was one of the first coaches really to kind of come in and show an interest in our meetings. And we asked him. I remember the first day I got to meet him, and he was we were like, "What is it that you want? What's one thing you want for us to look, that you want in a player?" And he said he wanted a gym rat, and a guy that loves basketball, and that's what Halliburton is. He is a gym rat in there all the time, and that's the stuff that we found out about him, and that's why. But they knew about him early on. It wasn't like they came across them or I came back. It's like, hey, this kid Halliburton. They liked him when he was coming out of college, and then they tried, for a few years there to try to get him to the Pacers earlier than what they did.
Pat Knight is our guest on the Rhinegeist Brewery guest line, talking about the Pacers, and of course now the head basketball coach at Marion as well. Pat, was there a player that either collegiately or through free agency or a trade, was there a player that other franchises may have been lukewarm on, but your background work said otherwise, and now you are happy to see what they're doing because you can say to yourself, I knew it. And a lot of people wrote that guy off, but I knew that was going to be a player.
Andrew Nemhard. I mean, nobody would talk about the kid. I mean, that kid should have been a first-round pick. And he had a great last year of college, and his intel is probably the best intel I've ever had. I mean, off the charts. I mean, he was Mark Few's all-time favorite player. And, like, so much so that we actually send jerseys to all the head coaches when we draft their players. And, you know, so they can put them in their, you know,
office,
at the school, their
right.
film room office, you know, for recruiting. That's the only player Mark Few's ever taken the jersey home to his house. Their assistant called me to see if I could send them another one that they could put in their NBA room at the school. And we go to the combine, and the kid just is unbelievable in the combine. And we're all ecstatic about him. And we're talking about, you know, what can we do to move up in the first round to get him. And then as the draft was going on, I mean, the higher-ups were coming in, talking about moving up and getting them, and nobody was interested in him. He just kept on falling down in the draft, and we were able to get him in the second round, where you're talking about, I mean, obviously a first-round talent, and our whole staff loved him after the combine. Mostly the guys that saw him, the scouts, we loved him during the year, and then when the higher-ups got to see him combine, I mean, he was a no-brainer for us, but nobody else saw it. I mean, it drove the Gonzaga guys nuts. They were calling us like.
Was it size? I mean, what was the reason that you think that Nemhard was overlooked?
Talking to the guys, we talk about his size. He's not flashy, and doesn't do anything that jumps at you. You know, he doesn't. You know, he's not posting stuff on social media back. You know, I don't know what he does now, but not posting stuff. I mean, he was just a winner, and wasn't flashy, and didn't call attention to himself. And I mean, it drove those assistants nuts when I talked to him, like, why don't these other teams see what you guys see? And but we were nervous. We kept thinking somebody's going to bite, you know, oh no, they're going to have him in for a workout, and nobody did. And so our higher ups were prepared to try to trade up and everything. And it just never happened. I mean, that was the whole league missed out on.
How many guys, Pat Knight is our guest, who is the head basketball coach at Marion and was a scout for the Pacers. How many guys on a roster can you take flyers on where you say, yeah, we're not totally sold on the personality or the character, but the talent is there that we can be patient and see if it works out? How many of those can you realistically take that chance on?
Maybe one, but then you'll have discussions like, do we have a strong locker room? You know, can they keep the guy under control? Do we have a guy in the locker room that can take this guy under his wings? Like, you know, a guy that's, I loved him because it was during when I was doing the NBA deal. The locker room guy that gets no credit, man, that keeps everything under control is James Johnson. I mean, he is solely there to be the locker room guy and the leader. I mean, no one's going to mess with that guy.
But those players look – let me ask you this, Pat. We think as fans, that James Johnson, you know, because he looks half crazy, right, and he's like a martial artist and all that, and I say that in a loving fashion, but we think that he's there as like this intimidator. Is it that players are intimidated by him, or is he kind of like the uncle in the locker room role?
He's the uncle that will whip anybody's ass for you. I mean, the guy's 49. The guy's 49-0 in kickboxing, and he's been around the league. You know, he's been through it. Hell of a player, got playing time, and he's one of those smart guys that's added years to his career because, okay, I mean, he's been in every role. You know, starter, reserve, and now he's the locker room guy. He's just a leader and knows he's a protector. But he's been in every situation, so he can talk to everybody on the roster and what role they're in, because he's been through it all, because he's been in the league for so long. Great personality, and takes no shit from anybody. And you got to have a guy like that. All the good teams have a guy like that. And And if you have a guy like that, now you can probably take a flyer on a guy. But you don't want more than one because, as they always say, you can have one asshole, but if you have two, they breed. And so, but if you have a guy like Johnson, you can take a chance, on a kid that maybe, that you wouldn't really look at times, but has the talent and everything. That's what cracks.
Is there anybody on this roster, Pat, that you were genuinely curious to see how their personality was going to mesh?
No. We were really careful with the personalities, really careful what we needed. And even a kid like Matherin, we needed alpha dog, a bulldog personality during that draft, and that's what he is. And so each draft we went into it with the type of personality we want, and they have to have a personality. We weren't into guys that didn't, and that's the other thing people understand. Like, we, not just the intel we get, we interview these kids when they come and work out for the pre-draft workouts. We take them a dinner, we take them a lunch. I mean, we put them in every environment to see what personality and how it'll fit with a team. We interview them at the combine. And then, you put in effect our sports psychologists. And so, again, for us, the personality was really important. You have to have one. And plus, just you got to be a good human being, too, just because, like I said, about the small market deal. And so that was we probably spent more time on that aspect than we did on the playing part. That part was the easiest part, really trying to, he fits. That's what we need. He's good enough. But it was the personality and everything, because the Pacers have always been about culture. That's why I think they've always overachieved in a way, because they're not in a big market, in Miami or New York, where it's easier to get free agents and attract players. But right from the get-go, that was the one thing. I mean, they hammered in me when I went 10 years. I was there 10 years. We really got to dive into the background of these players. We want personalities. We want good people. And Bird always said, too, like, if you can keep a group like that together for 3 to 5 years, something special can happen. If you look at this roster, KP and Chad and them, they've kept this team together, for a few years now, and it's full of good personalities, good people, and gym rats. And you keep them together, this is what happens. You end up having some special seasons.
Can they get it done tonight?
I think you're an idiot if you don't think so. These guys have proven, man, there is no quit in them. And I think they can. It wouldn't surprise me at all. It's going to be tough, but I mean, you're an idiot if you bet against these guys.
Pat, how are things going at Marion? You said you got high school kids over there camping right now. And I know that you guys have been busy trying to put your roster together from after injuries a year ago, but how are things looking?
No, everything's great. We got 8 guys returning. And then we're bringing in 7 new kids, 5 high school, 2 D1 transfers. And we got everything. We kind of burned it to the ground and got the culture set, and everything will be the way we want it starting next season. So everything's going good. We got 13 teams here for team camp, and recruiting's all done. We've already offered 5 kids for next year, and then even 1 kid for a class after that. So everything's ahead of schedule. Got through the hard part, the first season, trying to establish what we wanted. But it's been great. So I couldn't be happier. And my thing too now has changed. I put so much stock in what I've learned with the Pacers from personality standpoint. I mean, there are kids this year, I told my assistant, we're not taking them. I go watch them at a game. They don't stand up to their teammates, or they're an asshole to their coach. And that was one of the things that was great work for the Pacers. It's actually kind of changed my philosophy. Instead of just taking a kid because he can play, I really pay attention to the personality. I got to have a kid that you can at least have a conversation with.
Now, Pat, here's the thing. So in my scouting tells me that as a radio guest, like you're A+, right? Because we can talk about Marion. I've gone to Marion games. I enjoy that. Obviously, I'm here for the Elvis stories all day long, right? You're basketball royalty in this state, no question. The only scouting report I'd offer from here on out, We got to incorporate more of the word shoot instead of the other one, and then jerk instead of a-hole. Is that cool? Can we do that on live radio?
Oh shoot! I keep forgetting we're not on. Serious, my fault. Yeah,
You always just assume we're talking on the phone at 9:30 at night while I'm at a race, right?
Man, I'm so used to doing these podcasts and stuff. Where my fault. I apologize to the audience.
No, listen, it comes with the territory. Now, my other question is this: do you happen to know Rick Fox? Because Rick Fox now has stiffed us twice on coming on the air. He's forgotten twice. Do you know Rick Fox at all?
I knew him. I don't know if he'll remember, but when he was at Warsaw, we played together. We were at 5-star together, even though he's a couple years older than me. I hung out with him at 5-star, and then when he actually came down on an unofficial visit, I was buddies with him because of AAU and 5-star. I actually, even though I was still in high school, I hung out with him on his visit when he came for the day. But now, who knows, man? I mean, he's Hollywood now and everything. He probably forgets all that
That's
stuff.
right. Well, hey, I inadvertently sat next to him at the game the other night. It was like, you got to come on the show. And he's like, yeah, absolutely. And he stiffed us twice. So I'm going to go one more Hail Mary on it, and then that's probably it. But we'll see.
Okay. Well, hey, man, blame the language on my old man. I apologize.
The whole state knows that, Pat. Hey, always a pleasure, man. Enjoy camp with the kids, all right? And we look forward to talking to you again.
All right, guys. Go Pacers tonight.
All right. Appreciate it. Pat Knight, really good stuff there. Really good stuff on the Ryan Guest Brewery guest line. Way over. We'll take a break. We'll be back. So we just spent the break cleaning up the Pat Knight interview so we can put it on podcast form. But it was awesome. I love Pat. And literally one of, if not the most loyal people I know. Just a great dude all the way around. But unfortunately, we're a little over, so we got to pay a few bills. We'll be back in just a second here on Query & Company. Pat Knight is tremendous, man. I'm telling you, that guy. I can't tell you how much fun we had in college, and I mean this sincerely. Almost entirely innocent fun. I mean, everything from going to haunted houses to him taking us to supposedly haunted places around Bloomington during Halloween time, and going and getting the flying squirrel as a pet, and all of it. I mean, the guy is just nonstop entertainment. Bobby has been waiting patiently to discuss Game 4. Joins us. Hi, Bobby. Thanks for waiting.
My pleasure. I enjoyed hearing Pat Knight. I was LMAO, so I don't get you in trouble.
Fair enough.
When Pat was sitting there using this colorful language like his dad, and I just see you sitting there rolling your eyes going, you can't do that. You can't do that.
Yeah. You just know it, right? What are your thoughts on tonight?
I hope they do well. I hope the biggest problem I saw from Game 4, and I hope I prove it wrong, the stars on Oklahoma City play like stars, and the stars on the Indiana Pacers play like D-League people. When your 6'11" starting center gets out-rebounded by 8 of the other team's players, there's something wrong with it, and I understand he's sick, but I also understand he's making $20-30 million a year to play a kid's game. So I just hope our guys come out and they come out prepared to play. And if they do that, it'll be a good game. If they come out prepared to play, they don't come out prepared to play, the game's going to be done. The series be done at 6, but I don't think we're going to like the way it's going to play.
I'll tell you, Bobby, I hope you're right, man. I do think that they'll come out tonight and play. Now, Oklahoma City's really good. I mean, obviously we know that, right? I mean, they were the favorite going in, and it was so disappointing because it was right there. And it still is. I'm just saying that, instead of – when I say it's right there, I don't mean like the series is over. I mean we were so optimistic and excited about the possibility that tonight we would be talking about a potential NBA championship being won tonight. And they still have a shot, and it would be in Game 6. If they were able to win tonight, then they could still do it at home in Game 6. Jimmy joins us. And, Jimmy, we're up against it here, but I wanted to squeeze you on. Bottom line is, if Game 6 they have a chance to close it out, you're the good luck charm, and you're going to be there, right?
I'll be there. And, hey, Jake, real fast, tell John I said hello. Eddie is the hardest working man in showbiz, and he didn't pay me to say that, by the way. But real quick, Jay, I think Miles is going to be X factor tonight, and Aaron Neesmith is going to have one of his Aaron Neesmith-like games, and we're going to do this in 6, and I'll see you at the parade, Jake, and see you Thursday night.
Listen, I hope there is a parade, Jimmy. We shall see. John just walked in and was asking. I am at Nipper's Grill and Tap tonight on 116th
Was that Jimmy, our Jimmy?
That was.
I love Jimmy Eggleston.
I think you just said you're the hardest working man in showbiz.
I thought I wanted to make sure I promoted where you were going.
Nipper's Grill and Tap, 116th.
Eddie climbed right up my rear end when I did that, too. I thought, man, your dad can keep his damn mower stuck in that mud behind my house over there.
He got it out, and it wasn't behind your house. He got it out.
I'm not helping. No, I'm just joking. No, I thought you were promoting your event.
That was a buzzkill Friday night, John.
Yeah, it was.
Here's the thing. They have not lost back-to-back games since March 10th. Does that stay true tonight?
I think it's going to be highly difficult because now you've got the end with OKC in their sights right now. I know. I think that there was a lot of things born, I think, of that fourth quarter, Jake, on Friday night. A lot of things that I think OKC probably questioned about themselves that they got legitimately positive answers on, and a lot of things that the Pacers weren't questioning that now maybe you do.
And I thought, honestly, John, it was the first time, I said this earlier.
I mean, I sound like Sigmund Freud.
They got out-pacered. I mean, honestly, like at the end of the game, they were worn out.
Well, Jake, we just talked about that in Game 3 where they out-OKC'd OKC.
Yeah, you're right.
And then you just bounce right back and do the same thing. So, hey, that race last night was awesome.
It was a good race,
it
wasn't
was a hell of a race.
There was a lot. There were storylines. You had Connor Daly leading. You had thankfully both
Joseph
people walked
Newgard
away.
Looked like a lit match. Looked like somebody striking a match.
Totally
like a
right.
blue tip running in.
And he was not happy about it. That's for certain.
He was not happy about it, too. Did he not talk to anybody?
He did not. I was interviewing Louis Foster. So Newgarden and Foster both go into infield care. Kevin Lee's doing television. I'm doing radio. And so Kevin says to me, "Look, if they come out together, you take Foster, and then so I'll get Newgarden, and then And I said, okay, cool. So Foster comes out. We knew Newgarden was about to come out. So Kevin says, you take Foster. So I'm interviewing Foster. And then I saw Newgarden completely turnstile Kevin Lee. I mean, and Kevin was like, "What in the world?"
Is that just because he wouldn't do that in the past? Because is he Penske-ified? Is that what that is?
I don't know. I've always gotten along with the guy, always.
Yeah. He always seems like a nice guy, but he seems different than he once was.
But I think that just the frustration. I think the frustration there just boiled over, and he was. I
got news for you. I mean, what the hell do you expect? Some dude got up in the marbles or whatever the hell that crap is right there and rolled all over the place. And so,
what's the big show today, John?
We'll find out here in a little bit. I'm going to promote you at Nippers.
Nippers Grill and Tap. That's right, 116th Street up in Carmel.
That'll be a good time tonight,
It will be fun. Michelob Ultra Zero going to be there.
We'll fire it up for everybody, Jake. They need a little helper on the road.
Man, I'm going to try to get everybody fired
up,
right?
Eddie, tell your dad if he ever gets that thing caught in the mud again. I don't know. After the way you just yelled at me.
He did it. That was quite the scolding.
You see that scowl on his face right there? What?
Quite the scolding, right? All right, John's up next. He'll carry you home, and then hopefully tonight the Pacers get it done, and we'll be talking about it tomorrow, but we'll be talking about it either way. Look forward to seeing you tonight. Nippers Grill and Tap. I'll be there starting at 7 o'clock. Pacers viewing party, 116th and Carmel. John's up next.